When I sit down to write about what happened, I think about the quiet at night on base. You might expect noise. We were military folks, after all. But the truth is that the stillness could stop a heart. I remember descending corridors taut with brisk fluorescent light, everything bound tight under regulation, just another body in the labyrinth of concrete and steel. It started as routine, and maybe that's what makes it all the more sinister now. I wasn't always assigned to cleanup duty. For most of my military career, I stuck to the shadows, just another cog in the wheel turning behind closed doors. But when I got the call, I couldn't resist the pull of something deeper, perhaps foolishly believing it'd bring me closer to the truth. When you're in a no-records division, you become intimate with erasure, swept under the rugs where people pretend dirt doesn't hide. We'd clean up projects that fell through the government cracks, small things at first. Once, there was an oversight on some technology drawn from God knows, where that nearly sent a whole town spiraling into blackout. Another time, we shadowed a group of well-dressed suits after a bioresearch issue they said had unexpected results. Not glamorous jobs. Thankless assignments that left you swallowing bile because no one was supposed to know. The call that mattered came one humid afternoon when the air felt dense with anticipation. I remember the smell, like rain about to break the heat. My superior officer's eyes were slate cold when he briefed us, a former government contractor site requiring decommissioning. He asked for volunteers, which wasn't protocol, a sign I should have read as abandon hope. I said yes. Who wouldn't? Curiosity is a beast, especially in a world built on secrets. I packed essentials, careful to leave behind any identifiers. We traveled under the pretext of a routine exercise, but knew better than to ask details aloud. I slipped into the van as the sunlight dulled to gray across the horizon. Inside, no one spoke much, words swallowed into the engine's restless hum, each of us alone with nerves tightly coiled in the shadows. When we arrived, there was a smell in the air, faint, metallic, like the scent of cold steel left out under the rain. The building loomed like an afterthought, tucked in dense woods far from any watchful eye. It was hushed within, as if long since forgotten. The power grid still thrummed, a pale hum beneath the skin. Soon we'd discover that had been a mistake. I remember first assessing the layout, the scuff of boots on the hardened tile echoing as corridors branched out like capillaries. Our orders were simple: disconnect life support systems, scrub data boards, dismantle safeguards. But simplicity had never really been part of this job, and what unsettled me most was the absence of technicians or prior staff. The place was already hollowed, leaving only its spine, bare and waiting. The deeper we went, the more the place felt lived in by something unsupervised, as if our arrival had disturbed the settled dust of years. Once, we underestimated a threat, believed it to be another mess like any we'd handled before. We paused to regroup in an area with untouched cubicles, claustrophobic rows of desks with personal effects eerily preserved, as though the workers had left for lunch and never returned. The problem was the silence. When a place should buzz with life or even mechanical whir, there was silence like a wound. It might have saved us to stop then, find the nearest exit and write up a different story, but we were there to finish a job. We pressed on, footsteps swallowed by the silence, like ants oblivious on a length of wire stretched towards the inevitable fall. What we uncovered wasn't ours to decipher, only to erase. Beneath layers of encrypted data and defunct servers, we found logs, incomplete accounts, fragments of projects unending, failures unmeasured. We shared restrained glances, eyes searching for confirmation that we were still bound to an oath none of us could voice. I felt the chill long before the air began to cut with the edge of something unnatural, like we'd opened doors meant forever sealed. By the time we understood, truly grasped what we'd done, it was too late. The building seemed to breathe around us, walls expanding and contracting with malignant intent. My fingers were trembling, and not from the cold. There's this misconception that the military prepares you for every eventuality. They don't. Some things lie outside the realm of preparation, where orders falter. And there we were, standing at the precipice, the unknown cracking open just wide enough to see the depths before swallowing us whole. Only one path remained, to continue, descending deeper into the heart of this forgotten behemoth. There's a moment where you taste iron in your throat, a slow burn of dread that everything held in shadow is now dangerously exposed. That's where I freeze this account. We've yet to F. Inish, steps suspended on the knife edge of discovery. But once the door is open, you keep walking. Don't you urgency exit or a point of return, let alone choice. We followed the darkness, ushered by our own momentum, certain that the consequences had only just begun to unfold. As we descended further, the air thickened with memories of dust and neglect. Decades of institutional secrets seemed embedded in every surface, as though the walls themselves were sentient with logged confessions. The labyrinthine nature of the corridors seemed to reshape around us, willfully confounding any semblance of navigation. Mac, always the skeptic, seemed unusually tense, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the wall. "Ever get the feeling you're being watched by the very ground you stand on?" he muttered, half to himself. We hit the lower levels, where the infrastructure was supposed to disconnect the reality above from the purpose below. Here, the darkness had texture, and the fluorescent lights flickered with a hesitant pulse, exposing glimpses of faded diagrams and cryptic equations scrawled on the walls. It seemed as though the architects had anticipated the building's secrets might demand expression, ceaselessly etched by unknown hands. The silence no longer felt empty. It hummed with a pressure that closed in around us. It was the absence of chaos that unnerved us most, for the contrast sharpened the sensation that chaos was simply lying in wait. We pushed forward, motivated by a need to vindicate our decision to venture deeper, foolish though it may have been. We reached what appeared to be a central control room, its glass walls overlooking a vast, tiered chamber below. The space was filled with rows of consoles and hibernating machines, whose purposes were inscrutable to my untrained eye. Screens lined the walls, as blank as stale ice, suggesting that whatever had lit them had long since extinguished. Yet, there was a dormant anticipation in the room, whispering possibilities of its former life. On a whim, I brushed a layer of dust from one of the screens and was met with a static bloom of gray snow, broken by an intermittent flash of green code, an echo of communication trying to reach us from whatever abyss it had fallen into. The others moved around the chamber, slower now, their steps tentative, as if testing unspoken boundaries. "You think anything knows we're down here?" Lewis asked, the sound curving strangely in the silence. Before I could answer, Mac grunted, fiddling with a console, his face reflecting the ghostly glow of the malfunctioning monitors. "Feels like it knows the place exists, maybe even that it exists because of this place." Whatever it referred to, something was undeniably wrong. A nagging sensation pulled at the base of my skull, like we were intruding on a space meant exclusively for ghosts, intangible resources never intended for outsiders' eyes. The room seemed to breathe, its energy shifting, a sleeping beast barely held in slumber. As if marking supernatural agreement with our presence, the floor vibrated, a subtle seismic murmur beneath our feet. We paused, eyes meeting with the sharpness of animals listening for predators. The consoles jittered with nascent life, lights flickering to the rhythm of a mechanical heart, awakening. Lewis' voice broke through, strained and hollow. "Did you hear that?" We all had. A low, resonant hum began to weave through the space, sensorially untraceable. It reverberated like a requiem, a note held impossibly long that seemed to phase through the threshold of hearing directly into the pit of the stomach. "Whatever this is," I rasped, my throat dry as burned paper. "We might have just turned it back on." There was no time to debate. The consoles flared to life with colors that didn't belong, leaking shades beyond the natural spectrum, and filled the room with unplaceable warmth. Our ritual of discovery had crossed irrevocable bounds, and we stood frozen at the intersection of judgment and terror, shadows inked across unforgiving light. I wondered what we might have resurrected, or if, in truth, we were mere shadows of what the place had been waiting for all along. The building, perhaps, had only been sleeping, preserved in its own purpose, until we became the players it required. Another vibration, stronger now, coursed through us, compelling movement we hadn't chosen. Panic clawed its way into understanding. We were not the masters of this unfolding story, merely its latest patsies, thrown into the deep where consequences abide. And it was then, in that moment of primitive fear and revelation, that the hum coalesced into a cadence, a voice frozen on the cusp of recognition, echoing through the chamber like the forgotten plea of the building itself. "Help us." The voice, like a relic uncovered after centuries buried, reverberated with the unholy clarity of what lay beneath our comprehension. It was not a cry nor a command, but something further, beyond, like the building itself had used our own vibrations to culminate into this desperate litany. "Help us." It echoed again, lacing the room with its spectral plea, as colors continued to seethe and mutate wildly on the console displays. My team stood paralyzed, held fast in the throes of collective realization, witnesses to the impossible, confronted with a plea that defied the boundaries of time and place. "Mac, what the hell is happening?" Lewis demanded, his voice nearly splintering beneath the weight of panic. Mac, always prepared with a quip or theory, was silent. His face reflected the chaotic, polychrome storm, eyes wide like moons in the feverish haze. I don't know," he finally managed, the words weighed down with displacement. "But this isn't right." The hum, that omnipresent drone, refracted into higher, unbearable frequencies until it became a chorus, fragments of past conversations layered over eons. The room itself, or perhaps the building, was speaking. My skin prickled as neural pathways frayed at the edges, my mind struggling to accommodate the pitch and scale of this unearthly frequency. The screens erupted in violent displays of numbers and symbols, dancing with incoherent speed. In brief intervals of clarity, images materialized, faces and blueprints, flickering snapshots of sacrifices and advances etched into the building's very marrow. The light was blinding, bewildering. Each reveal left synapses crawling in its wake, the line between pain and discovery growing thin. It felt like a record player jumping tracks, a fractured journey through echoing time. We were becoming tangled in a feedback loop of creation and consequence. Unsure now if this was our own doing or an emergent outcome, as if our presence activated the dormant remnants of a story clawing its way back from annihilation. Our hastily settled reality began to erode, the collective vibration like a tuning fork drawing souls toward their own unknown resonance. Static bled into the air, bringing with it whispers of ancient instructions, automated protocols spun from forgotten minds, panicked queries truncated mid-utterance. My feet found momentum before decision formed. A lurching retreat was underway even as I grasped for my teammates. "We have to get out," I managed, the urgency sucked dry of reassurance. Movement pulled like magnets breaking alignment. We stumbled backward toward the unassuming doorway, our exit obscured by the tormented symphony wrapping tight around us. The sealed containment of survival-minded steel that had been our pretense turned us in ways a map could never convey. Doors once silent operators groaned now under forces stirring from deep slumber. As we fled, the lights flickered in a frenzied strobe, rendering glimpses as surreal montages of limbs and twisted architecture. It felt as though the walls had tilted toward us, a balancing entity seeking equilibrium disrupted by our intrusion. Each corner we turned showed the facility forcing closure behind us, like skin stitching itself back together post-injury. Each passageway collapsing into shadow, leaving only muffled apertures where exits once lay. We became aware then of something chasing us, an awareness more than a presence, a shadow of intent riding the air's charged currents. We ran blind, instinct driving us through the ambiguity toward a hope undefined, an escape undeclared within the confines of a structure alive, beyond the essence of stone, steel, and human ambition. "Don't stop," I urged, feeling the utterance simultaneously swallowed into the engulfing, all-consuming air. Our synchronized footfalls, a primal patter marking desperate trespass. Mac, panting beside me, confessed with humorless brevity, "This is a bad time to admit most of the base layout is abstract to me." Somewhere within, amid the churn of timed echoes, laughter struggled alongside terror's path. The building responded in kind, a faint tremor through the floor not entirely its own. Down into deeper chambers still, the foundation itself carried us, preserving secrets within secrets, our approach illusory and unbound by our own fragmented steps. When we finally hit the approach back to the surface, or so our minds reassured us, the corridors began to narrow, a purposeful attempt to compress and encapsulate the event as if time itself wished to document our transgression. Dark, metallic surfaces reflected back shadows twisted in haste and uncertainty. Our breath came in frenzied gusts, tainted by the sterile metallic taste of cold iron that lingered in the cavernous air. Beneath our fading courage, the vibrations hummed an unending prayer, vibrating along that same spectrum, carrying, pleading from its very origin. "Help us!" It was not our end being sought, I realized, but absolution for a place conceived through and infected by time. Our arrival released tormented whispers, old machinery begging clearance, a departure from sins not there. Yet shackled, without expiation. In knowing then that there may be no end without consequence, amid alarm and collapsing logic, we became uncertain witnesses to the last breath until a guiding light beyond rational inception. Whatever began here would continue as accepted fiction, wrapped in the collective unconscious shy of memory, like a tune recalled with obscure truths irrelevant until sung. When we finally breached into sacrificial daylight, our limbs dragging free from looming shadows, we were fewer than before. I took stock of a world that felt suddenly transparent and evasive in its new simplicity. Damaged, yes, but far better than beneath. There are boundaries between the known and unknowns, now intimately understood but irrevocable. Lines where ghosts mark the margin of acceptance, indulgent in our most trivial control over them. As unwilling custodians, stories are woven and judgment withheld, as shadows fade faster than those who once dared redefine them. They are waiting always. The unbidden recollection sinks back into the deep, eroded foundations set beyond the last veil peekable by clarity. A watching, hearing house, holding its own secrets eternal, longs only for that simple redemption, an imploring sigh murmured to those who chance on entry. "Help us!"